it's definitely something new for Facebook and how we perceive it. I'm not surprised that somebody like Mark Zuckerberg sees this kind of trajectory for the company, and they talk about the metaverse, um, and we can kind of unpack, again, what that is. But this whole idea of like the metaverse and everything, it feels to me like it's been this trajectory of technologies and social change for many years now. Starting with the idea of like virtual reality, which is going back to like the '80s and stuff or whatever, right? Um, when would that actually reach fruition? I feel like people thought, oh, that's going to be soon, and it's just always a little bit not quite there.
Yeah.
Technology is playing catch up. But then you have like the internet burgeoning and developing, becoming more sophisticated infrastructure technology. Um, you have things like these massive online games, stuff like the World of Warcrafts. Second Life is an interesting one because when I was in university, the college I was at for information science tried utilizing it as an alternative classrooms now. Second Life is essentially like this online world, but it's like an online game, whatever, and you have these you move around in these virtual worlds um, as a way to interact with people. And that's those novels, like, oh, that's kind of interesting and neat. But like, would we just start doing classroom work that way? Like, I don't know. I was very skeptical, and of course, it didn't really take off. That's the long story short. But these are all like attempts, to move in some direction where like people are interacting that way. We kind of do it through like online chat and then FaceTime and videos and things like that. And now we have, augmented reality with smartphones. You can get meta information about your environment around you through this small portal. But then, virtual reality is just an extension of that in a much more immersive way. The challenge being that, creating that immersion is difficult. Well, Facebook bought Oculus, which is a VR device company and product. I found that interesting back then. I didn't make that connection at the time to where Facebook might actually be going, but now it makes complete sense. Because that's a piece of that technological puzzle. But why all that, right? I mean, if people have seen that Ready Player One movie, that was pretty fascinating. It was based on a
Yep.
book by Ernest Cline. And for folks who haven't seen it, it's kind of a dystopian kind of story. There's a future, there's an energy crisis, global warming, social problems. Is that the future? Or is that now? No. But yeah, it seems much more bleak in the story and in the movie that's adapted from it. And there's this virtual metaverse called Oasis that people would go to and play games and interact and all kinds of fun stuff. But when you see it visually, their take on it, advertising and all kinds of monetization there. It's incredible. That's not surprising to me. I mean, why would people invest in this stuff unless you can make money off of it? Unless you already have a ton of money, like Elon Musk, you probably wouldn't do it. But even then, those guys, they still think, to do it in a way that's profitable. They're making tons of money off it, even they didn't need to. And it all really just, you think back on it, what is a big defining thing for the internet these days and what drives what people are doing with it in marketing? It's about rich experiences and driving engagement. Those are cues for YouTube and websites, certainly. Driving engagement. Why? Because there's more activity. There's more captive audience when there's a lot of engagement. Engagement's this big word in digital marketing. And why do you want a captive audience? Because a captive audience is somebody that you can advertise to, put ads in front of, to monetize, make them take action and click stuff. So, this not the multiverse. Sorry, that's Marvel. I'm really excited today. There's a lot of great stuff coming out on those streaming platforms, but that's a different topic. The metaverse, why is like people excited about? It's going to be so cool. I'm sure, there's kids probably thinking about it, but honestly, I'm wondering, it's just going to be like ads everywhere. You guys set up your metaverse ad blocker. You're being bombarded because now it's jacked into your brain. What do you think about all that?
It's funny because we were talking about it before this, and we both came up with the Ready Player One type universe thought, and that would be so cool. And I think that's the direction a lot of people are thinking in. But you're right; it would make ads a lot more subversive. It would probably make ads a lot harder to ignore. Then there's also the question of if there is something, and who knows when and if it'll happen like that. But if there is something that's that significant and that immersive, will Facebook be able to charge for it? And will people actually pay for it? Because right now, most users on Facebook, unless you're running ads, Facebook is free. So are they creating something that they can monetize on besides ads? Because anyone who's in the advertising industry kind of knows that Facebook ads and Facebook marketing is a little flat. It does not deliver the way that it once did or the way that it promises to do. So for that reason, are they creating something that they can monetize with users directly? And it's very possible we're moving in that direction. But if it's something that nobody else is offering and you can't get anywhere else, if they charge for it, will people pay?
I don't think they will charge for it.
You don't.
I think it will be, if this kind of thing develops, it may be iterative. You'll see like it'll be like more kind of like virtual reality stuff kind of jacked into Facebook, and at some point they'll meld together. I think Facebook to some degree, I think it's created an infrastructure for people's real personas to be connected through the internet, so that you actually like it's not anonymous. It's like attached to like you have a driver's license, except it's like a website. I think those things are going to become more interconnected over time. And some places around the world, like China, they already are. There's a lot of impact there already. I think for Western culture and society and countries, like that's kind of playing catch up, or it might take a different trajectory. I think some of the and because of that, if the kind of political sphere, which I never really want to get into in a geopolitical sense, like stays in a similar way that it is now, I think they'll be segregated. There'll be like kind of stuff that like maybe China has, and for their people and constituents, and you have stuff maybe for like Western audience and everywhere else. Who knows? But I think Facebook will kind of become more of like that infrastructure for like people's profiles and how they can be connected up with these little hooks and things. Like how like a website links to other websites, and then they'll probably have some kind of level of the VR stuff added to Facebook experiences and more video, until more and more it's like these things you just connecting to it, and maybe the virtual thing is a part of it. I mean, certainly 100 years from now, whatever, it'll probably just be through a chip in your brain, and you won't have these devices. And from that sense, it'll be incredibly subversive if it gets that far. And I think people will sign up for it. Somebody's like, oh, don't put a chip in me or things like that. Like people, they're asking for it. You won't have to. And by a similar tone, they won't have to charge for access to this thing. The money will come from the advertisers again. And even though people will probably forget that, sometimes Facebook advertising seems to work and sometimes it doesn't. When there's this newer thing, to borrow, inspiration from Don Draper from Mad Men, new is powerful intoxication. It has impact on advertising and marketing. Just it being a newer thing, it's green fields, right? And so companies will throw money into it, and that's where like Meta will make their money, is access on that side. And then there will be a whole new marketplace for plugins and apps and access to walled gardens of stuff that other people will have, like of areas of things you can do within that experience that Meta doesn't even control. They're just giving other companies access to do something like they do now. Like you can put apps and games on Facebook, and then Facebook gets a cut, similar to how Apple gets a cut off of apps sold in the App Store. They don't sell access to the App Store, but you need to have a Facebook, or not Facebook, an iPhone, whatever, or an iOS device. So I think that's going to continue to be the way that sort of thing is monetized, is get as many people into it as possible, which means lowering barrier to entry and then making money on the activity that they do once they're in there. It's kind of like eBay. Like, that used to be a thing. Hey guys, you know what eBay is? Remember that? I think it's still around. Yeah, it's still around, but it's like, they reach critical mass. You wouldn't go anywhere else. That was like their whole thing. Once whoever reached critical mass first, they're the winner.
So what you're saying is that instead of trying to come back from advertisers spending less money on, we'll call it lackluster marketing, they are making that marketing more pivotal and more useful by appealing to users to spend more with that marketing.
I think, yes, because Facebook just isn't as interesting or engagement driving as it used to be. I think there was a time where it was more effective, and that's when people were more engaged with it and it was more novel. And, a lot of those people are just like, I'm kind of over Facebook. Well, when people are over it, they're less engaged. There's less activity.
Yeah.
And that's not a good thing. And I'm sure Facebook's been doing everything they
And
can,
there's less
Meta, to.
activity, advertisers see less coming from it, and then they use it less. Yeah, that makes sense. I can
So
see
if you
that.
replace that with something that has tons of engagement and activity, that can go well. So I could totally see why they would go that route, the evolution. Will that come anytime soon? I don't know. I think a lot of people thinking about it thought it would be a very quick thing and time like, oh, VR is just around the corner, virtual reality, all that. I think it's going to continue to be an evolutionary thing. Like there'll be things that are added to it, and at some point it'll be like, oh, we're kind of there, but it wouldn't be like an overnight thing where we're launching Metaverse today. I don't
So
think
the
that'll.
question is with that, why are they talking about it now if we don't see anything from it yet?
Well, it's a great distraction. So, I mean, I feel like some of it is like the whole rebranding thing and all that and disassociating. Why did Google turn into Alphabet and then like put Google and other things underneath Alphabet? I think Google's had a lot of stuff going on, last few years. It's a similar kind of thing, These people can think about all the pie in the sky stuff they want to do and let these other projects, which sometimes are controversial, do their thing and still make money and revenue. And if they become too much baggage, set it free. I think Facebook took a cue from Google in that regard.
Yeah. And we're talking about it now. We see nothing in the metaverse yet, but we're already talking about it and we're already excited about it and hypothesizing what we'll see. So
Well, I think we do see some of that actually now, but it's not as compelling as what we sometimes fantasize what it could become, like in those movies, like the Ready Player One. And you got the idea of like this movie that came out recently, Free Guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like a similar vein for that. Like, it's a very interesting topic, and it's going to continue to grow. And it's not the first one. There was another movie with somebody's, the other ones for like gamer or something like that. Guy basically controls like these death row convicts and makes them move around this virtual world and that kind of stuff. I can't remember it off my top of my head, but it was a few years ago that movie came out. So there's more and more of these coming out. People are interested in the idea, and it's coming from this inspiration from these online games that are already here, like World of Warcraft and all these other ones. Like they have millions of people playing them, but it's a much more confined experience, right? But I can imagine it wouldn't be a big leap in the near future for some of those to incorporate virtual reality as a part of that.
Yeah.
I think the technology on the presentation side is what needs to play catch up, and you're seeing more of that. Like you're seeing occasions that, like, Dave and Buster's and Urban Air and some of these places, they have like little virtual reality things where it's one or two people and they can do this thing. I feel like that's a pretty big step. And you see some of these cases where they have the technology where they have these little platforms you stand on that are kind of like treadmills, which is one of the biggest problems, I guess you could say, trying to solve. Because everybody who ever watched Star Trek and like the holodecks and stuff where they're in this virtual experience that's like, oh, wow, wouldn't that be cool for anybody who's a nerd, right? There's nothing wrong with that. I'm a nerd. I think that'd be cool, right? This totally virtualized experience around you in some place that you've never been before, right? But like, how do you make that happen? The idea that you can move around into space instead of just standing there like, oh, cool, I can see stuff. But you're using like a keyboard while you do it. That's the disconnect that they're trying to solve right now, I think, technology speaking. And they're making strides. These little one-person like treadmills where you can move in 360 degrees and even like run. And so you're interacting with this environment, right? As those things continue to be developed and evolved, that's where you're going to see more of this just being connected straight into the existing persona infrastructure, which are either these online games or Facebook. And I think it would be with these online games where it happens first. And then you'll find Facebook connected to these online games in a much more cohesive way. So it's like, instead of like a fake persona or whatever, it's your real one. Or not. I mean, who knows, they may give the option that you can just be a fake person. That could be a way to monetize, right? It's like, oh, you want to use like a fake representation of yourself? You're going to have to pay more money. Otherwise, you're going to have to be the real you.
That reminds me of a Black Mirror episode from a few years ago. I don't know if you've seen it. It's 15 Million Merits. And he talks about how like nothing's real anymore. And he's like, what am I going to use this money for? Shoes for my, whatever they call it, their avatar thing. So it's interesting. There's so many things to think about with this one.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, like all those kinds of things are already there in a much less interesting presentation. You know, it might
Yeah,
be like a little app on Facebook where you have a little little person thing like in the game that you bling out and you give stuff to, or like, you know, if you think back for even some kids, like the Tamagotchi things, you'd have this little device you carry around that has like a little pet that you interact with throughout the day to like feed it and stuff, right?
I
Like
had
those
one.
things are already, that's the
So
kernel of all
fun.
that, you know. It's just to get it to that next leap is the hurdles from a technology standpoint of like the interfaces. um if we can get over these crunches with like processors because of all the people farming cryptocurrency, and maybe people can make better and faster computers, right? But there you go. That's where I think it's going. Sounds like I've thought about this quite a bit. I assure you, I don't think about this every day, but you know, as somebody who used to be a kid years ago, watching Star Trek and all these other movies and stuff, thinking like, man, wouldn't that be neat one day? It's just fascinated me to see like how close we are to some of that, for good or bad, for better or worse. I don't know how much those things will transform society in a positive way or negative way. I think there's room for both. Just like with Facebook, right? There's controversy all over the place there.
I mean, it brings out a lot of my like childhood wonderment too. Not even just technology stuff, but I used to love Alice in Wonderland. I used to try and walk through my mirror all the time. And if I had the opportunity to have a virtual experience like that now, I would do it in a second. And I think it really does bring out that sense of wonder and that sense of mystery and just being able to possibly in the future or the near future, far future, be in this virtual world that doesn't exist, but it kind of does. Sounds awesome. I'm
Let's leave
excited.
it with that. It could be awesome. We hope it
Could
is.
be awesome. We'll see.
Don't screw it up, Mark Zuckerberg.
Hi, this is Sarah from Denver Data Web. Thanks for watching. Please like our video and subscribe for future digital strategy chats. You can also visit our website at denverdata.com or find us on social media at Denver Data Web.